to be able to do that as a leader, to not feel like I have to hide pieces of my identity or pieces of my story or lived experiences that have deeply shaped who I show up to be every day, right? That's what justice looks like.
Mhm. Hi, I'm Debra, an executive coach, consultant, and the founder of Debra. After years of leading in education, often in spaces not built for me, I now support others doing the same, especially women of color who are leading, healing, building, and figuring it out as they go. This is with Debra, real talk about legacy, leadership, healing, and courage to lead with shrinking. We are all navigating so much, and we're still showing up. This space is here to remind you we're already enough. Welcome back to Do Better with Debra. It's not often I get to be in conversation about leadership in this way. Honest, reflective, and grounded. With people who don't just hold leadership roles, but who deeply care about leadership costs and what it gives. In this episode, I am joined by Dr. Rachel Camacho and Dr. Armando Madrid, co-founders of Alchemy Blueprint Consulting and longtime educators and leaders. What you'll hear isn't a polished leadership playbook. It's a conversation about becoming, about learning the terrain of higher education, leading systems that weren't built with you in mind, and choosing to stay human while still doing the heavy work. If you're a leader who has felt tired, unseen, unsure whether this work is still worth it, then this conversation is for you. Let's get into it. I am really excited that we get to do this. It's really rare that I get to talk to educators that love leadership. They're leaders, but they don't get excited about leading, right? So I'm so excited that I get to have the time to be with the both of you today. And that our conversation is really going to be grounded, not just in leadership, but honest, grounded, reflective, and our learnings along the way. I always tell my students, I wasn't always this version of myself.
Mm,
And I tell them that because they get stuck on titles and they get stuck on like the doctorate or whatever title I'm holding. And I want them to be able to see themselves in me. So that's why
mm,
I'm like, I wasn't always this version of myself. And I
that's
made
right.
plenty of mistakes.
Mhm.
So, but before we get into all of that, how are you entering this conversation today?
Well, I could start. I am entering optimistically. We got to celebrate Dr. Martin Luther King's birthday on Monday, and I got to spend that afternoon with students and leaders who center their work in community and justice.
Mm,
And even though we continue to hear the ways in which our communities continue to be attacked and the indecent way in which we have been navigating sort of the national politic at the federal government level, I have to continue to move with a sense of urgency and optimism
mm,
because I think that's what leadership is calling for today.
mm, mhm, mm. How about you, Armando?
For me, I think similarly, with everything going on, I have to almost purposely focus on the good little nitbits here and there that I've been getting this week. And I'm excited. I'm coming in excited because this conversation is important to me. It's as part of the theme is pouring into each other. And I think speaking to both of you today is going to pour into me, which is what I've needed this week. And I've had good conversations with colleagues this week in preparation for this conversation. I think that also has filled me a little bit. And I'm excited to just share what we've experienced, what brings us to this work, and as you said, why leadership is exciting for us and why we, like leadership. Like that's something that we don't hear often. So I'm definitely not in that mindset to share those tidbits that could be helpful for someone else. So I'm excited.
I love that. But tell me a little bit about your business, because you own your own consulting business.
We're co-founders of Alchemy Blueprint Consulting, which is a leadership consulting business that is really intended to, provide a space for people that, have needed an outlet to explore their leadership styles, their seeking to be poured into, to
Mhm.
provide guidance in spaces that oftentimes, don't look like for people like us.
Mhm.
Armando and I have really only known each other for 4 years, but it feels like a lifetime. And I think that really speaks to why Alchemy Blueprint even came together. We found synergy pretty quickly. And I remember after my second interview, I said to him, if this doesn't work out, we're going to be friends
Mhm.
regardless. And I think that's what makes this kind of work, this leadership work. Everybody who wants to serve in leadership, whatever level you're at, because it doesn't matter your title or your pay, what have you. I think we all get to show up in our own leadership. It's great when you have individuals like Armando, who can be a thought partner, who brings joy to your everyday, that challenges you in their own purpose. And so, from this relationship and us talking throughout our time working together and with other really great colleagues about what does it mean to show up in your purpose, was birth Alchemy Blueprint. It's to share with others that your blueprint is unique. You get to create your own roadmap for what leadership should and can look like for you. And we don't all have the tools in our tool belt to know how to navigate these systems or these institutions. And we're going to grow into our purpose and we're going to grow as leaders. And that looks different for each of us. That part we could help you center, but you may not always have the tools.
Mhm.
And we've picked up some tools along the way, and we want to share those with others so that they can feel like they can show up authentically in
Mhm.
their purpose, in their values to do good work.
And
Mhm.
share all their identities and find hope and guidance in whatever they're doing, whatever it is. It's how do we provide those nuggets of information that could get them to that next thing, whatever that
Mhm.
looks like.
Mhm.
So we provide one-on-one coaching. We have this great Roots to Rise Leadership Institute that we're launching this spring to bring people together and for this semester and provide again a curriculum that is rooted in authentic leadership.
I love that. I love that. And it's rare that you meet somebody feel that right off the bat. So I'm really excited for you and your business. So let's go back. If you could sit across from your younger self, what would you tell yourself about leadership, especially navigating the terrain, navigating roles, the system? Because when you start, you just don't know. What would you tell yourself? And what was your first role?
So my first role was in academic advising. And, I really was passionate about supporting students and getting them to where they needed to go and finish that college degree. And
Mm.
if I could look back to that younger self, I would tell myself that all relationships matter. Right. And I think at the time I was afraid to go up to people because of title, because of positionality, the power dynamics that exist just inevitably in higher education. And I think if I can go back and redo it, I'd reach out to people more and really build my network. I think I missed a lot of opportunities because I was just afraid. As a first
Mhm.
generation college student, I felt that things just come to you because of sheer luck.
Mhm.
And looking back, I think if I was a little more proactive, I would have done a lot more of that.
Mhm.
I would say that my first leadership role, because I'm an educator before I'm anything else, was when I was a teacher in a
Mhm.
K through 12 classroom. And I was young. I was just out of college. I was 21 years old. And I was thrust into a classroom of youth who were coming out of the juvenile justice system. And I always say that my greatest teachers were those students. And I I learned so much in that leadership role about not only their courage, but my own courage, right? To navigate and support them through systems that weren't always just, right? Through policies that didn't always favor their families and their communities. And in terms of if I was to think about my younger self and today, there weren't many women of color in education spaces. let alone higher education landscapes. And so because I had to hone my power and also not feel like I wasn't going to have a seat at the table, part of what I think I lost early on is what I call tenderness now,
Mm,
right? That I felt like I had to hold my ground in order to remain at the table and to advocate for the families and communities and students that needed my voice. I had to pull different tools into my tool belt. But what I know to be true now is that I can show up in my vulnerabilities and I can show up in my tenderness and in my full humanity, even when others may not value those ways of moving through these spaces.
mhm, mhm.
You are listening to the Do Better with Debra podcast with co-founders of Alchemy Blueprint Consulting, Dr. Rachel Romero Camacho and Dr. Armando Madrid. Make sure to visit dobetterexecutivecoaching.com and learn how you can lean into your power and lead with confidence, purpose, and joy. And now, back to the podcast.
So let's talk about the tenderness and the vulnerability, because I think that is probably something that we all value a lot. You said my students have been my greatest teachers. For me, they taught me tenderness. They taught me how to feel love, how to give love. So I think it's important for us just to pause for a minute and talk about like, how can we still be leaders in this system and show up in our full like vulnerability and feeling?
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's to say that like we are multidimensional human beings and we're multidimensional leaders. I mean, I want to be candid. I've had my vulnerabilities and my humanity weaponized against me. So you have to understand that in systems and institutions, you have to protect your spirit, you know? So showing up in your vulnerabilities and your humanities doesn't mean that you don't forget that these things can be used against you, right? I think we choose our moments to show up in our vulnerabilities and humanity, in our tenderness. It's important to, when you feel safe
Mhm.
and brave, that you do that. But you're not doing that at every single moment of your
Mhm,
day, right?
mm,
Because that's not what leadership will call for every single moment of every single day. But if you don't show those vulnerabilities and that tenderness, then you don't model for your staff and your team and people who are looking at you that you don't even know are looking at you and watching you and how you move, that we get to show up in our full humanity.
mm,
And I would add, I think for people like us who are, have different identities, there's an added emotional labor that comes with visibility, right? People would ask us for coffee, invite us out for lunch, oftentimes because they would see us speak at a meeting and they found some connection, and we almost felt almost like our duty to take them up on that offer and take them out for coffee. And that was what brought me tenderness, was being able
mm,
to share a meal or coffee with someone that wanted to be vulnerable and share. And those 15, 20 minutes during my day really re-energized me to say, you know what? This is why we're doing the work we're doing, because us just showing up and allowing us to be vulnerable and authentic about who we are as leaders and providing that to them is making their day easier, and also showing them that we also struggle. We also are going through tough times as leaders, but we also have the time to be human, to
mm,
strip off those titles, strip off the education and say, we're human. We also hurt. We also are going through this as well.
mm.
And that, I think, is what allows us to learn from each other and open up those spaces that I find like are like my inspirational moments to say, this is what we do, the work that we do.
Yeah. And I would just add that I think that being able to show up in your humanity, being to be authentic and genuine is a form of justice, right? When people can see us in our full selves, it is justice to be able to do that as a leader, to not feel like I have to hide pieces of my identity or pieces of my story or lived experiences that have deeply shaped who I show up to be every day, right? That's what justice looks like.
Mhm.
If I don't feel like I can do that, then these institutions aren't serving us.
So on the other end, um, love, joy, vulnerability, there is a toll that happens in leadership, an emotional, psychological toll that I have experienced. I know that many people that I interact with, clients, people that I work with, people of color, women of color, men of color, what has been the emotional and psychological impact on being a leader in your career inside systems that were not built for us? Have you encountered emotional and psychological toll in your leadership?
Well, I think first is recognizing that the toll, right? Like I think oftentimes we think, we're doing our job, succeeding in whatever capacity we're supposed to be. But what is hidden is that emotional toll that as people of color, as marginalized people, as a queer man of color myself, first generation, there's this added stressor that comes with trying to build something in a system that was not meant for someone like me to succeed. And when you recognize it, you take back the power and say, well, how do I then utilize these systems to better myself, to better the lives of my staff and our students, right? And it's by having conversations like this, it's by sharing anecdotes that have helped me be a leader, and then instilling those nuggets of information to other people as well to say, well, that's how you can do it, or it's what I recommend you do because I went through it. This is what helped me. And being able to do that and share that authenticity has been a way to relieve some of that psychological toll that comes with this work. Right. Because I remember looking back when I was younger and I would look at that table that Rachel talked about, and I wouldn't see people that look like me making decisions for the students that were looking like me.
Mhm.
And I feel like my goal is to get to that table and be a representation of those students. But no one ever told me that once you get to that table, there's this like stressor that comes with it. There's this like, how do you then now manage all of these things, knowing that you're now one of the few that are at that table?
Mhm.
And it's how do we then take those spaces back and say, I need to rethink what I'm doing. I need to find my community, find my village, my community to say, how do I fulfill that duty, but also keep real to myself and not get lost in it. And when I need to, step back, step away, have coffee with Rachel to say, hey, how do I regain my why to get back to where I need to be?
Thank you for sharing that. I think it's twofold, right? Being the one of few, knowing the weight that holds for people that look like us, that are thinking that we are the hope, that we're going to advocate for all the things. There's a weight and responsibility for that. Then, if you're one of few, for me in my career, I have had to sustain some really like crazy racism, sexism. I have been judged a lot in my career, and I would say some people have wanted me to conform in leadership. Like, I feel like their finger is always on me, right? Or talking behind my back, or sabotaging me in some kind of ways. And so, a Black woman, it takes a toll, right? Because
Absolutely.
I'm like, I have the doctorate, I have the title. What else do I need to prove? And it's always that proving piece, right? So I would say if I look back, the psychological impact is me often being like, is this really happening? Can I tell anybody about this? Because this, okay, I'm just gonna take it and work harder, right? And I just keep pushing it down.
Mhm.
It's not until I left this one job that I realized I'm like, wow, like I had just been pushing down the harm.
That's right.
So when you ask me like what's the question, I just wanted to give you like my experience a little bit about like there is a psychological impact, there is an emotional impact to leading.
there's a physical impact. Like
Yeah.
you don't walk away from racism and sexism and people taking perceptions to be true without impacting your spiritual, your physical, your emotional well-being. Um, I too, as a woman of color, have experienced great sexism at a young age. I experienced ageism and racism. And I think the way it shows up and manifests at different points of my professional trajectory is questioning my decision, um, not following my gut, being fearful. Did I say the right thing in this space? Being quiet and silenced because of people's perceptions about how I move through spaces. It's affected the way I dress in the workplace and how I feel like I have to show up. It's made me do a lot of labor outside of work because there's a lot of emotional toll that is put on BIPOC folks um, in different industries because, you're going to be the one who's going to be wanting to do the diversity work, or you're the one who's going to address this hostile situation that just happened, right, in our place of employment. And so that has required that I do work so that I don't carry that emotional labor, but I don't get extra benefits for it, right? I don't get a fund so that I can go take a yoga class or that I can go get an IV drip because I'm tired AF, right? Like I don't have those additional benefits, but I'm doing that labor. So that's how it manifests itself. And also making the decision that as much as I may want to be at this institution because I can do good work, I'm not being seen or valued. Whereas other people might be able to stay and thrive and flourish, I'm having to make decisions about traversing geography, different institutions, having to make tough decisions with my family about the impact that we'll have because I can't be seen as my full self and poured into as a leader, as a woman of color.
So it's interesting because you talked about your experience. I'm guessing that you decided to leave at a job at some
I've
right?
I made decisions at different points of my trajectory that it was my time to move on.
What told you, or what did you tell yourself, or who did you talk to that said, no, you will find another job. You do not have to stay
Right.
here because of all the stories that we write.
Sure.
The audacity of you to leave. So how
The
talk to that.
audacity of me to leave. That's right. First of all, I think you have to do a lot of like deep self work. I think you have to know your purpose, right? Because if where you're at is helping you live your purpose, then you have to go. Period. Right? If where you're at isn't aligned with your values and you can't see that coming to fruition because in fairness, no institution, no system is perfect, right? And so you have to ask yourself, can I contribute to creating a better community? Um, can I be part of the solution? Can I help move the needle? And you also have to find the courage. Most people don't leave because they don't think they can't get the thing. You just alluded to that. And I think you have to bet on yourself. You have to have the courage to bet on yourself and do the work. And sometimes that means that's not going to another institution. That means you're starting an entrepreneurial endeavor. And there are steps. There are a lot of steps, right? And so I do the work. I think you also got to think about where you're landing and what kind of stamina you need to do that work. Are you physically healthy enough to do that? Have you been so taxed where you're at that you cannot physically show up? What might a mini sabbatical look like for you? And then launch. So I think that it looks different for everybody. My blueprint won't be someone else's blueprint, but those are the kinds of things that I'm thinking about. But, to think that the personal is not political is a fallacy. And every place you land professionally, and if you go into your own self-employment, you have to understand the role that power plays as a leader, right? And so those are also things that I take into consideration.
Amanda, what does betting on yourself look like?
Well, I mean, Rachel kind of alluded to this, but I had to make a decision for myself to walk away when I wasn't feeling psychologically safe
Mm.
in a position. And before making the decision, I did what she said. I talked to different people. I kind of mapped out what this could be for myself. And me walking away was betting on myself, was to say, do I have enough support physically, emotionally, financially to walk away from something so that I could bet on myself? And it took some time. There was a lot of hurt that happened when I left, partly for myself, because as a type A personality, leaving something without having something lined up was extremely challenging. But I had to trust that I was, as you said, betting on myself. And a good colleague of mine said, how about we reframe this? You're not walking away from something, you're taking a sabbatical for yourself to really hone in on what you want to do with your trajectory moving forward. And I've been on this journey now, and it's been great. It's been challenging. It's been all the things because I've had to rethink how, as a person of color who has received all the accolades for all the work that I've done, is now having to really hone in on myself. Like, what is it that I want to do with my life moving forward? And what is that going to take? And that's a little bit how Alchemy Blueprint came to be is, if I'm going to bet on myself, that's what this looks like. And, having to learn from the great ones and what this looks like has been a good thing for me, but also challenging. Having to every day think about, what am I doing for myself today? What is going to fulfill my cup today? And, it's bad if we've been on a journey, but it's about, if we don't believe it for ourselves, how do we expect to do that for others?
Debra, I wanted to add one more thing, which is that have you considered thought partners?
Mm.
Right? Or like, are you tapping into your networks internally at that institution and externally? Because the other thing is that I have found great joy in many of the places that I've been able to serve in a leadership capacity. And so if you're not feeling a sense of belonging, I'd also challenge to say, are there people, are there communities, both internally and externally, that you're strategically tapping into as well? Because making the decision to pivot out is one decision, but another decision is like, if you're still here, you might be here for a reason. And let's unpack that and then talk about how do you move strategically if you see yourself staying so that you do feel a sense of connection. Maybe not to the work every day, but to this community that you can create.
You are listening to the Do Better with Debra podcast with Dr. Debra Y. Griffith and her very special guests, co-founders of Alchemy Blueprint Consulting, Dr. Rachel Romero Camacho and Dr. Armando Madrid. You can find them on Instagram under alchemy_blueprint or their website, thealchemyblueprint.com, for more information. And now back to the podcast.
What have you had to unlearn on your journey? And from unlearning, what are you now teaching? For me, I came in as a young leader. I thought you had to dress a certain way, talk a certain way, write a certain way, speak a certain way. I think even if I had to really think about like performance evaluating, I was taught those gotcha moments, right? And then I had to unlearn, like, no, that's not how I want to do evaluations. That's one lesson that I had to unlearn because I was modeling what was being done to me.
Absolutely.
So what was it that you unlearned? I know there's probably many things, but what do you teach today?
I'll just use something as an example just because it happened recently, but I do think that we don't have enough play in our work. We don't try to create moments of connection in our work. If you don't do those things, then you don't infuse laughter and joy and community. And that's some of the vulnerability and hard work that I talked about earlier for myself, that I started to realize I could show up. So unlearning this, like, I've got to protect everything. I can't share everything. I can't be tender. It's just not who I am at the core. And so at my current institution, I've been doing one-on-ones with my team. And what do you think we need so we can build synergy so that we can feel connection? And one of the things that some of my emerging sort of leader staff members have shared was like, I don't feel like I know everybody. I want to know people. And I was like, oh, okay, well, that's easy. We could do that. We're going to go bowling together, right? We're going to go bowling. We're going to go laugh. We're not going to talk about work. And for 2 hours, all you hear was like the kikiing, the laughter, the joking with one another. And you could see that people were just taking a deep breath. And so, you've got to build in those moments where people can see each other eye to eye and heart to heart. And that's what love looks like, right? It's and in a lot of places of employment and institutions, when I began early on teaching, you were told you can't use the word love. And I was like, how can you teach if you don't use the word love? Because teaching is an act of love, right? And so how does love and humanity and joy show up in our places of employment and where we lead? And so that's what I've had to unlearn, is that I get to show up, and it's work for me, Deborah. It doesn't come as easy, because when you get to a certain level of leadership, you spend more time solving problems than you do, finding time to connect. So you got to work at it.
Mhm. So this concept of pouring into others, why is that important to you? Why is that important in your business?
I owe a lot of gratitude to people that have poured into me. And, shout out to, Dr. Rocio Mendoza, Dr. Jonathan Grady, who you've had on your podcast before. These people saw something in me to say, what if you led in a different way? What if there was more possibility for who you are as a leader? They asked me these questions early on in my career and gave me an opportunity to think of my trajectory very differently. And because of these people, I, got a second, third degree. I looked at other opportunities outside of what I thought I could do. And those experiences have led me to where I am today. I would not be the leader I am if it wasn't for people that took the time to say, there's something I see in you that you don't see yourself. Let's bring that out. Let's challenge yourself. Let's step outside of that boundary for you to think of your experience in a different way. And because of those things, I am where I am today. And now I feel like I almost owe it to them and their legacies to do that to others. And when I have those cups of coffee with colleagues, take them out for lunch, that's what I do. I pour into them by just being authentic, asking them questions, getting engaged with who they are as people. And what I have found was that those people are grateful, because not a lot of people take the time to do that. Because as we said earlier, we're busy with all the work and everything we have to do, part of our job description. But what we don't do is take the time to say, I hear you. Let's talk about what possibilities exist within your realm. And let's find ways to get you to that next thing. And it may not be another position. It could just be they just made them think of their work differently. And that's enough for me, because pouring in can look very different for every single person. And I think that's what I'm getting more excited about doing this work, is being able to do that for others.
Who are your clients? Are they mid-level leaders, senior level, all of the above? Who are your clients?
They're across the board. I think that there are people who are sort of rising in their leadership. And that could be anyone who's sort of 2 to 3 years into their profession. It could be mid-level managers who've been in their position for quite some time and are ready to step into the next leadership role. And it's executive level leaders who, what I know to be true is that you have to invest in yourself to get coaching at a different level when you're leading as an executive, because that coaching looks very different. That's very personal. You're bringing in sort of the challenges that you're facing. What does power look like at this level? How may my leadership have to shift given the climate? And so it's all levels, and it's across industries.
Armando, why do you feel the responsibility to pass on all of your lessons to these clients? So you're going to pour into them. You both have battle scars, I'm sure, many lessons learned, very joyful experiences at the same time. But why is it important for you to do this? Because you don't have to. And it's not easy to run your own business, as you know. So what is the why here?
I think for me, what I've learned is that, titles change, institutions change, people change, but the people that you build with, it's what carry us forward, right?
Mm.
So in a way, what Rachel and I are doing is planting seeds that in hope with time will create this community of people that will then do that for others as well.
Mm.
So I think we're reframing the system in a way, because we're building these people that are coming to us for guidance, for opportunity, for whatever that is. And hopefully they'll take the strategies, the tools that we provide for them, and then they will then do that for their people, for people that they want to pour into. And slowly but surely, we're going to have this phenomenon that's going to exist in higher education where people are stepping up to the plate, people that look like us, to say, I want to demand a seat at that table. And I've learned that from these people, right? Because we're building that community. So I think that's what brings me to the table. That's what brings me. Why? Because it's important for us to do it. Otherwise, what's all this for?
You are now celebrating your 10-year anniversary as business owners. What has been your impact?
I think we're going to see more BIPOC leaders who are centered in their power, who are transforming the landscape of higher education. They're helping to change policy and communities that are going to impact for the better. They're going to be sponsoring and mentoring the next generation of aspiring leaders. They're going to be walking in their full humanity and in their identities. And the younger generation, I don't know what generation that will be, but I don't know if it's going to be like Generation C, who knows? But whatever generation that is, they're going to have some extraordinary models to look up to and look to for what is possible, what leadership can look like, right? When we talk about being equity centered, when we talk about, what does justice look like, they will have that tangible, visible example. It won't just be the 10 of us at these, top level positions, but we'll be across levels and industries. That's the dream.
It's a great dream. One final question for the both of you. What do leaders need to hear today? January 2026. What do leaders need to hear today?
I'm just going to say that I think that it's really easy in 2026 to feel a sense of distress because of what we are experiencing as a nation. But the truth is that we have had times in history where this country has experienced even more egregious acts that have happened to vulnerable communities. And so I'm going to remain optimistic. I say to leaders, remain optimistic. Reach out to your networks, find your community, be true to who you are. And you have people like Dr. Griffith, like Dr. Madrid, and like Dr. Camacho, who are equally here to do the good work and stay your course.
Right.
All I'll add is that I think that I would encourage leaders to lean in to that thing that brings them fear and try it, because I think oftentimes we forget to do so for many reasons. And January 2026 is the year to lean into that fear and try something that maybe they didn't think they could do.
I've looked back. Did you say you have something coming up this spring?
Yes. Our Roots to Rise Leadership Institute launches in February. So we're still taking in applications for any emerging mid-level leaders who want to spend 5 months with us. They'll have individual coaching. We'll have monthly sessions via Zoom where we'll be interacting as a cohort to bring to light the best leaders and get them ready to attack the world.
I really appreciate the way that you have used your life lessons to create this business that you're going to pour into so many people. I can feel the love from the both of you, even though we're across each other on screens. And I know you're going to make a huge impact. You already have. So thank you for being my guests. Thank you for sharing your leadership journeys and your gems and just your perspective. Very powerful because, again, I don't get to have these kind of conversations with people. People don't show the vulnerability often or show where they may have fallen and have to get back up. So I'm excited for you both. And please invite me to the 10-year anniversary because I want to be there for that party.
You'll be there for that party. Thank you so much. This has been wonderful.
Yes, appreciate the invitation, and hopefully your listeners, gain some insight in our lives a little bit and how we lead, and hope to connect with them after.
Awesome. As I reflect on this conversation, what stays with me is the reminder that leadership isn't about arriving. It's really about becoming. It's about the choices we make when things are hard, how we protect our humanity, and the responsibility many of us feel to make the path clear for others. Rachel and Armando remind us that tenderness and joy are not extras in leadership. They are essential. That unlearning is part of the growth. And that pouring into others is one of the most meaningful things you can do with what we've learned. If this conversation resonated, I encourage you to learn more about their work through Alchemy Blueprint Consulting. And if you're listening and questioning yourself, well, let me say this. Your strength was never the question. Thank you for being here. Until next time.
You've been listening to co-founders of Alchemy Blueprint Consulting, Dr. Rachel Romero Camacho and Dr. Armando Madrid. If you enjoyed this episode, follow the show, leave a rating or review, and share with a friend or colleague. You can always find Do Better with Debra on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and now on YouTube. Thanks for listening.